The open beta of Mecha Break is nearly here, and this is the second part of where we are looking at all the strikers and which hopefully fit your playstyle. Now, let me very quickly again explain what this not is. This is not a tier list, and no, I will not take into consideration balance, right? We already know that there are clearly strikers who are stronger, who are weaker because of like all the balance things which are still happening. But that doesn't really matter here what I'm doing in the video. I explain to you what a striker does, what it doesn't, and what you can expect when you are jumping into that striker yourself, so that you don't have to think for too long which striker you actually want to play. With that said, if you haven't watched the first part yet, definitely check out the link down below in the video description, and let's continue, shall we? The first one in this video is Hurricane, the Ultra Heavy Defender number 2. You look at Hurricane and you look at Tricera and you realize very quickly, now they are not really alike, are they? Till you play them and then you realize, oh, they're actually closer to each other than you thought. Yes, Hurricane doesn't have a turret form, and you can definitely move more freely, and you have different abilities, playstyle-wise, but the abilities and what you do as a Hurricane is actually pretty close what you would do with a Tricera, because all your abilities are more stationary, right? You can put up turrets, you can put up an energy shield, which is stopping all the bullets, not other strikers, but all the other range attacks, right? And you have also decoy drones you can put up when you're using your shield to block attacks, and then you throw it into the air and it becomes a decoy drone, and they will attack that instead of you or other players. But all those abilities I just mentioned, they are stationary, and they have cooldowns. So what you want to do is you want to look for the right position where to use all those abilities, because that's the worst feeling, right? You use all of them and then you realize nobody is there. Not your allies, not the enemies, and yeah, now we have a lot of like mini robots flying around and nothing is happening. That's very disheartening for every Hurricane player. So knowing what's going on the map, where your team is, where the enemy team is, and where you can help the most is very important. And yes, Hurricane has also not just defense capabilities, but also some of the attack capabilities. One of his definitely more interesting attacks is his Energy Blaster, which is his normal attack, because you can charge it, and then when you shoot it at the enemy, it will create an energy sphere where it hits and do continuous damage on that position. So this weapon is really good to disrupt the enemy lines and make sure that they might give up on an objective, or that they have to leave like a certain position which was advantageous to them. And not only that, you also have the splitter, which is basically a lot of energy lasers. Now keep in mind, this is more an AoE attack than is a single target melt. It can definitely help, but you want to try to hit as many enemies as possible with that, and that's where it really shines. So while Tricera is the character with a lot of persistent damage, I would say that Hurricane has even more defensive capabilities to protect its team. So Hurricane is a little bit more on the support side of the ultra heavy defenders. Now let's talk about Skyraider. Skyraider looks a bit like Falcon, but this time you are just completely transforming into a jet. And the reality is that's not really the case. Yes, they can both fly, but while Falcon is, as I said, an assassin, Skyraider is more, well, as the name is already suggesting, a raider, right? You are flying over the enemy team, you shoot all your abilities, all your ordnance, and then you do a U-turn, you come back, and you do the same thing again. And you will realize very quickly that you don't do a lot of damage. The damage Skyraider is pushing out with flying over the enemy line is not that strong. You don't have a lot of burst. But that's not really what you were doing. What you were doing is you were trying to disrupt the enemy backlines. You were trying to be a nuisance. And you really try to make the enemy move from the objective, because if they don't do that, there is a pretty high chance that they're getting bombarded into the ground. You're basically the bomber, right? While Falcon is the attacker, the jet, right? You are more the slower bomber who is doing a lot of damage if the enemy stays in a certain area. So that's what you were trying to do with Skyraider. With that said, Skyraider has especially a problem in the sinkhole, because on that map there's not much room, and I highly not recommend to use Skyraider. The same goes for the city. The city is more about taking out enemies relatively quickly if you can, and Skyraider is not necessarily the best for that. That doesn't mean that Skyraider is not doing damage. It's just the playstyle and its strength lies in disrupting the enemy and fighting in specific areas of the map and do a lot of AoE damage there and try to move the enemy out of those specific areas and weaken them enough so that the enemy that your team can actually do the rest, and you will get more assists than you will get mostly kills with Skyraider. Inferno, the heavy attacker. Inferno is really interesting because most of the attackers who do a lot of damage, they do this through their normal attacks or through their abilities. Inferno is definitely the latter, right? Inferno is definitely the one which is doing a lot of damage through its abilities, especially when you have your single target laser ready. Inferno is doing massive damage. Now, with that said, when your abilities are not ready, then Inferno is losing out on quite a bit of damage. So that doesn't mean you will not be able to kill somebody just with your charge splitter, which you can, by the way, charge up at the same time. You have two of them, and then Inferno combines the two weapons into one and does extra damage, which is pretty cool. But the real damage is coming through the laser you can utilize, right? And that's where you were doing most of the damage. Keep that in mind. So when your abilities are on cooldown, you would do a little bit less damage, but also important, you have some abilities to defend yourself, which is important. So you are definitely one of those strikers which can be left alone on the battlefield for a bit and allows you quite a bit of leeway before you will be able to get destroyed and be taken out. Now, with that said, keep in mind you are not a tank, right? You are not a tank, just to make that absolutely clear. Next, we have Aquila, the heavy sniper. Now, as we have already established on the first part of the video with Narukami, heavy is not suggesting the damage you do. Heavy means that you have a heavy striker, a heavy chassis. You have a lot of health, you have a lot of shield, and you will probably have quite a bit of defensive capabilities to defend yourself when you are being attacked directly. This has nothing to do with the weapon. And that also explains why Aquila does less damage with its weapon like Narukami. Narukami, as I said before, has the highest single target damage with a shot, and Aquila does not. Now, you can thankfully transform the mobile beam cannon into sniper mode or into close range mode. So when you will be actually attacked, you can defend yourself. I would say that Aquila has a DMR, lol, my bad, DMR, and Narukami is more the bolt action rifle, right? That is basically the idea with those two weapons. And that also means that you can definitely defend yourself when the enemy is getting too close. You have also a defense field, which you can activate to block long-range attacks if somebody dares to shoot back. And one of the meanest abilities is the Claw Drone. This is a stationary drone you can shoot at an enemy, for an example, and then they will stun them for about 2 seconds. But more importantly, they also drop them to the ground, all the way down. So if they're over a cliff and there's a, well, chassis under them, you can just drop them right in there. It's a very strong ability and gives you a lot of leeway. Also very important, if everything fails and you just realize, you know what, this is a really bad position, I have to get out of here. You have the airborne kit, which transforms you into a jet, kind of ish. No, you don't transform into a jet. They actually just put like a lot of rocket thrusters on your legs, and then you're trying to get out of there. But it lets you escape, right? It lets you escape some really bad situations, and this is why I do think that Aquila is actually one of the easier snipers for beginners, because it allows you a lot of, oh shoot, oh, this was a mistake. This was clearly a mistake. I have to get out of here, right? And Aquila allows that because you can defend yourself in melee combat or close quarter combat. You can defend yourself with abilities. You can get out of bad situations quickly, and you are heavy. So you have quite a bit of shields and health to support yourself. So definitely the more supporter, well, the beginner-friendly sniper in the game. Next, Stego, the ultra-heavy attacker. While a lot of attackers have a lot of burst potential, Stego is definitely the more sustainable damage character type. You're more like the carry, right? So you have to find a good position. Then you go into turret mode, and then you adjust rockets. The answer to all your problems is more explosions and more rockets. And that's what Stego is delivering. That also means you don't have a lot of defensive capabilities. Yes, you have a lot of health, you have a lot of shields. When you were going into the turret mode, you will also create another shield in front of you, which protects you. And no, you cannot go through that with melee weapons, right? It has to be destroyed. The problem is your turret is only 90 degrees. So you can only go 90 degrees to the left or to the right, so you cannot see what's happening behind you. And every good striker pilot will just utilize that to drop behind you and kick your ass. This is why you still need the support of other players if they are finding you and see you. And believe me, Stego is not really invisible. And you need a little bit your team to have your back when you want to deliver the big damage. But Stego is definitely the DPS striker if you can keep up the sustainable damage, right? If you have a position where you can just do your thing for a minute or two and you would dominate the battlefield. But again, you need a little bit support. You cannot just easily get out of a position. You have an ability which makes you invisible and also regenerates your energy shields while you were in the cloud. In the energy cloud, you can disperse. But again, you don't really have much, and you need sometimes your team to bail you out. Last, but certainly not least for today, is Pinaka, the medium support. Pinaka is really interesting because Pinaka is not as maneuverable as Lumine, but you have a much more damage and defense capabilities. And the main ability to help their team, Pinaka is using the ring they have. Yes, they have the quick repair kits, which is on the arm. Let's talk about that very quickly before I forget, because unfortunately it's not really great, which means you have to be super close to the striker you want to repair, and then you can repair them in melee range. But it was very awkward in the previous betas. I hope they have worked on it, and most Pinakas have never used the quick repair kit. It was so bad, especially because you had to jump into the front line. And let's be real here, who wants to be in the thick of it as a support? Which made it so that a lot of people are just using the range healing capabilities of Pinaka, which is the splitter you have, or the emergency support drone. That is the big ring you have on your back. You can send that to another striker. The first thing it will immediately do is starting to repair the striker. It will also activate an energy shield. No, cannot be circumvented by melee attacks, which has a lot of health, and enemies have to break through that first before they can even attack again the shields and the health of that striker. This is a very, very strong ability. Also, your range attack is in the emergency support drone, in the ring. So when you are giving somebody the ring, you can also use that as a position to shoot. Now, this is like a 360-degree energy shooting you are doing from the ring, and it's not really precise. It's not really good. It's more like a pretty laser show than really helping that much. And you really want to use the support drone for healing when you send it out, and not really for damage. What also means, by the way, that you don't have the ring on you and you don't have your attack. You are vulnerable. Speaking about the attack, Pinaka's attack is a shotgun. That's the easiest explanation when you have the ring on you I can give you. It's a shotgun, and it functions as such. And when enemies are getting too close and think, haha, support, well, that would be easy pickings. Yeah, a lot of players go into close quarter combat with you and then realize the errors of their ways because you were using a shotgun, and you melt them down. Speaking about melting them down, not as strong as it was before, but you can also summon down a cover airdrop kit, which is basically a wall, which does immediate damage when it hits a striker. It goes through the shields, but it takes now a little bit of finesse because it takes quite a while till it comes down, and it's more usable as a wall now than actually doing some extra damage, but Pinaka players are still using it. Another thing you can also utilize is your repair drone. You can basically pop out those drones and they will continuously fly around you, and whenever they find somebody to repair, they will go to the striker and start the repair without any of your doing. And Pinaka is one of the more complicated of the two supports, but I would go so far to say definitely the stronger one in what you can do. Also, you can get quite a bit of kills with Pinaka and the shotgun. With that said, we are at the end of the video. If you have still some questions, let me know down below in the comments. If you enjoyed the video, I would appreciate if you leave a like. And if you're new to the channel, I would also appreciate if you want to subscribe for more Mecha Break videos in the future. With that said, thanks so much for watching. Stay safe. Bye-bye.